Welcome to the Lane Gorman Trubit Not-for-Profit webinar series. In this series, our not-for-profit niche will provide you with tips to help your organization grow and thrive. In this presentation, our guest speaker, Dr. Stevie Dawn, CEO of Orange Compass, provides helpful guidance on the importance of focusing on tasks that truly matter, the importance of delegation, and how to prioritize our tasks. You'll be introduced to the Shark method as a productivity tool useful for professionals at all levels of an organization. It is recorded live as a Zoom webinar on June 10th, 2020, and all information was accurate and up to date at that time. If you have questions regarding this webinar or future not-for-profit webinars, please feel free to email us at askus@lgt-cpa.com, and we will get back to you as soon as possible.
As many of you may not know me from previous performances, I like to say, from previous presentations and productions, I am Dr. Stevie Dawn, and I do love to be interactive. Since we don't get to be interactive because we're on this webinar screen, what that means is you're probably going to see my hands flying a mile a minute. It's just the easiest way for me to get my energy going. And so please, I'm not swatting at bees or bugs. It's really okay. I just am Italian and I love to talk with my hands. That's where we're at. So as we get started today, I really want today to be focused on you and making sure that the strategies I give you and the suggestions I give you in terms of productivity are really helping you not only right now, and let's all face it, we're in kind of a different circumstance right now than we even were 3 months ago. But I hope that these things are strategies you can take with you and adapt to when maybe you're back at the office and you're back to maybe the quote unquote norm and can still find those ways of productivity. So I'm definitely going to include some things today that are specifically for when you're having to try and work from home. But know that a lot of them, of course, work when you're working at the office as well. I just know that a lot of people are in that situation, and I want to make sure we cover that. So let's jump into this with just kind of an overview for me of what I look at when I think about productivity. And that is that we don't need another version of a to-do list. What we need is to focus on the work that truly matters. And when I think about productivity, that's really where I try and come from. That place of really focusing on making sure that we're doing the work that matters, doing the work that moves the needle. And for all of us, moving the needle can mean a lot of different things. So it might be that moving the needle for you is finishing that project for that client and moving forward. Could be moving the needle for you is helping the development team fundraise to their set goal. It could be moving the needle for you is just understanding that you wear 5 hats in this role and you're trying to make sure you can still breathe and work and eat and sleep and be a good mom all at the same time. Right? Moving the needle is a little bit different for all of us, but for me, productivity that doesn't move the needle isn't really productivity at all. So I want you to think about this question of efficiency versus effectiveness. Efficiency versus effectiveness. Do you feel you cater more to one or the other? I can tell you that I am someone who for many years in my career focused completely on efficiency. I wanted to do more in less time. I wanted to be the person who, if it was due on Friday, my boss got it on Thursday. I wanted to be as quick, as fast, as efficient as possible. And what I learned over time is that efficiency is great, except when you're dealing with people. When you're dealing with people, you absolutely have to be effective. You absolutely have to be effective with people. So when you think about it for yourself, efficiency versus effectiveness, we really want a good balance of both. We want efficiency with things and effectiveness with people. And so everything I share with you today is keeping those two things in mind. I want you to be as efficient with your technology, with your to-do list, with your meetings as humanly possible. but I also want you to be uber effective with the people that you interact with. Because if at any point you stop being effective with people, are you truly being productive? And that's something that I think we need to consider when we're talking about productivity. So I am somebody, you may or may not know this about me, and definitely since we're here in my home, it's a little different than if we were out and about. I could show you that I am absolutely addicted to sharks. And I know you're thinking, this girl is crazy, and that's true, but in the best possible way. I am absolutely addicted to sharks. And there's a long story behind it, but really they are my spirit animal, and everything I do kind of comes back to this idea of sharks. And did you know that sharks are amazingly efficient and effective creatures? And so about 5 years ago now, my husband and I were a couple years into our business, and we were struggling. There was so much work and we were so overwhelmed that we were really finding it hard to keep paddling, right? We were really finding it hard to keep swimming. And so we took a moment to say, what are we doing? What is our method? What is our plan through all this chaos? And as we were putting it all up on a whiteboard and mapping it all out, my husband turns to me and he goes, do you know it actually spells the word shark? And I was like, well, then this is the method for us. And so what I want to share with you today is the shark method of productivity. This is something that has helped me to not only have more time and energy for myself and for my family. It not only helps us to run our business, but we manage 4 different brands. And having this system in place has really allowed me to be productive in all of those roles without sacrificing efficiency or effectiveness. So if you have a sheet of paper, if you have something with you, even just a little Post-it note, it's really easy so you can write it down. Just write down shark, and we're going to spell it out as we go today. And I'm going to give you the process you can use to truly focus on powering up your productivity. Now, I probably should say, as we get in on this, is throughout this presentation, you're totally going to see some photos of sharks. I tried not to make them too scary. But if at any point it bothers you, just close your eyes and we can keep going. But I did try and take some pictures of sharks. And actually, these are all pictures that my husband took at our cage diving trip that we went on last year. So last October, we got to go cage diving with great white sharks. And these are all pictures that he took. So what I want you to think about is, when we're trying to be efficient and effective, one of the first things we can think of is streamlining, right? Streamlining. So when you focus on the work that moves the needle, when you make sure that everything you do is driving towards a goal, you are streamlining and getting rid of those time wasters, right? Streamlining and getting rid of those time wasters. So the first step of the shark method is to put together a master list of all your stuff, of all the things that you want to accomplish, all the things that are on your to-do list, all the meetings, all the events, everything. And when you put it all on the list, you try and start figuring out what can you streamline. And again, the very first question should always be, does this move the needle? Does this move the needle? Because if it's not getting you further, it could just be busy work. It could just be work that we've done for 10 years and is no longer important. Or it could be that it's work you could delegate to somebody, that you could automate or systematize. So we want to get to a point where what's on your plate is work that really only you can do. That it's work that is in the place where you are the one that has to get it done. Now, within our jobs, do we have work that only we can do, that nobody else in the role can do? Yeah, absolutely. Those are things that would totally be on the list. But what I found when I looked at everything is that there were definitely some things on my list that didn't need to be me, that didn't need to be something I did. It was something I could delegate. something I could give to somebody else to do. Or if it did have to be me, it was something that I could automate or make easier for myself. So I just want you to think about, of all the things you do on any given day, how much of it is streamlined? How much of it is actually moving the needle and focused? How much of it is work that only you can do? So step one in the shark method is streamline, right? Making that master list of tasks and asking yourself, what are the things that I am the only person who can do those things? And what are the things that other people could do, or that I could stop doing altogether? Trust me, if you really make the list of things that you're doing every given day, there are things on that list you probably don't need to be doing, but you do them because of habits, because we have these habits of what we do every day, and that sticks with us. Yeah, so I want you to think about streamlining. So the first step is to focus on that work that matters, and to create a list that we can streamline from. The second step then is making sure that we hand off the things that we can by delegating, or we delete the things that don't need to be done anymore. And one of the things that I think we struggle with when we go from efficiency and effectiveness and trying to compare those two, one of the things is realizing that delegation is not just for efficiency. Delegation is also for effectiveness. And that's what I want to talk about as we move on, right? So in our second step, right? So we have streamline was the first step. In our second step, hands off versus hand off. And yes, that is me in a cage. A year ago. It was amazing. That was me pointing at a shark. That obviously my husband was taking the picture of me and not the shark, and I was pointing for him to get that right, as some of you probably can understand. So hands off versus hand off, right? Being able to delegate what you can, delete the things that are no longer needed. Take your hands off the work that doesn't need to be done, or at least doesn't need to be done by you. Doesn't need to be done by you. So when you're thinking about your list, right? And maybe even if you just have at your desk right now a to-do list, a list of projects you're working on, I want you to really look at that list and ask yourself, what's moving the needle? What absolutely has to be done by me? And what really doesn't need to be done anymore? There are lots of things that we could take our hands off of. We are assigned tasks every day, every week, every month. And sometimes years later, we realize we're still doing the tasks because it's become a habit. But it's not effective anymore. A habit can be good or bad. And sometimes when we've been doing things for too long, all of the habits become bad habits because they're no longer contributing to effectiveness. They're no longer efficient. And so what I think we should do is we should sunset these programs. Now, sunsetting is not my idea. I have to give credit where credit is due. My last supervisor at my last job before I went out on my own was an amazing woman and had this belief that every year, everybody should get around a table and talk about what programs are no longer serving us, what product lines are no longer selling, what services no longer need to be offered. What could we, in her words, sunset? What could we just let go, right? Like the sunset moves on. And so I want you to look at your list and I want you to make sure, is there anything in your world that you could sunset, that you could let go of because it's no longer serving you? And if you are a supervisor and a leader in your position, I will tell you that one of the best things that I think she did as a leader is she actually scheduled with each of us as her direct reports, as coordinators, she scheduled with each of us a sunset meeting, which was every year we got together individually with her and talked about what committees we didn't need to be on anymore, what projects we needed to let go of, what we wanted to focus on. And so that was a sunset meeting that she had with us once a year. And it really was very encouraging to make us more efficient and effective by letting go of things. And as a leader, it showed, I thought, remarkable leadership on her part by being able to say, hey, look, I know some things that we do for 5 years, 5 years ago it made sense. Today it doesn't. Let's look at that differently. And so I definitely encourage you to think about what could be sunset. Now, the second part of this is what could be delegated. To delegate effectively, you really have to choose what you're going to delegate. Oftentimes, we delegate the outcome, but we actually care about the process. I want you to think of a time when you have delegated something and you delegated it, they took it on, and then a week later, you end up just doing it yourself because it's faster and better than what they did, right? I mean, I can't see your hands raised, but I'm guessing if we were in a room together, your hand would be up because we've all done that. We've all been in that situation. The truth about delegation is this. There are two different ways to delegate. You either delegate the process, which is where you actually care the step-by-step that somebody is going to take to get you the result, and you want them to follow that step-by-step regardless, right? You want them to follow that step-by-step no matter what. That's delegating process. There's also delegating outcome or results, right? When you delegate the outcome, you're saying, I just care that this happens on this date. I don't care how it shows up. So making sure that we're effective in our productivity has a lot to do with how are we delegating? Are we delegating process, but we really could have delegated outcome? Or are we delegating outcome, but we actually cared about process? Here's an example for you to kind of think about. I have an assistant, right? And one of the things that I can delegate to my assistant, right, because it doesn't need to be me, is, hey, on Mondays, can you bring a current customer list to our staff meeting? So what have I delegated? The outcome. I want a current customer list, and I want it at the meeting. Makes sense, right? Now, I didn't tell her what it needed to look like. I didn't tell her what kind of program it needed to be in. I didn't tell her how it needed to be alphabetized or organized. I just said, I need a current list of clients. So then I show up on Monday and she shows up and she's got the smile and the packet of papers and she passes them all out. And I'm looking at it going, well, no, not like this, right? I mean, I wanted it alphabetized by company, not by person. And why did you just print this out of Excel? I would have preferred a PDF so that we can make notes and these weird lines on it. What happened was I really did care about the process, but I had only delegated outcome. When you care exactly what program they're going to use, exactly how it's going to show up, you're delegating process. And that means you need to be willing to train them through that process. We make a lot of assumptions in our communication, and one of the biggest ones at work is the assumption that everybody does the same thing we do. Everybody follows the same process. If I told you to print a customer list, you would obviously know I wanted it organized by company name, right? No, that's not common sense. That's just my way of doing things. So we have to make sure if we're going to be effective, if we're going to stop wasting time by having to redo things that we originally delegated, we have to make sure we're delegating correctly, that we're either delegating process or we're delegating outcome. And I always think we have to be prepared that delegation always means more time now to delegate it correctly, to save me time later. A lot of us want to delegate now to save us time now, right? I'm going to give this to you today so I don't have to do it. But the truth is, I need to spend more time with you today teaching you how to do this. So then later, I don't have to spend the time. But that's really saving me time later, not saving me time now. So if we're truly going to focus on efficiency with things and effectiveness with people, we've got to be effective in our delegation. And I know we've probably all been in that place where we didn't do it well. right? I am sure you can think of a time when you meant to delegate the process, but you delegated the outcome instead. We've all been there. And then your instinct is, oh, they did it wrong. Now I got to just do it myself, right? That's not going to save you time. The best thing you can do is invest time now to save yourself time later, and make sure if you mean to delegate process, that you do it, that you delegate that process and give them the step-by-steps of how you want them to show up. We've streamlined, we've focused on the work that matters, we've deleted and sunsetted things that are no longer serving us, and we've delegated effectively. Now, what's left on our list, what's left to do, should be things that we have to do, right? Maybe because we're the only ones who can, or maybe just because it's our job and we have to do it. Totally okay, right? But it should be things that we have to do, but not necessarily things that we love doing, right? There's probably some things on the list that you're like, well, yeah, I have to do it, but that doesn't mean I really love doing it. Those are when we want to look at automatic or autopilot. And this, by the way, I call this shark the happy shark because I feel like he's smiling. So this is my happy shark photo, and it's actually up in my wall. You can't see it in this view, but it's up here in a big blow up view on my wall because it's my favorite picture from last year. So automatic first. Let's talk automatic. I want you to think about where can technology assist you in conserving energy. Conserving energy, conserving time, really they're the same thing, right? The currency of productivity is not time, it's energy. We all have the same 24 hours that anybody else has. The truth is we lose energy. We don't have enough energy to get it all done. We may have the same amount of hours to get it done as person B has to get it done. Then why do they get it done and we don't? Because I didn't have the energy to do it. So we want to make sure that we're using technology to help us conserve that energy. And that's what I call the automatic section. What can you make automatic? Can you schedule your emails at different times? Can you have a template email for emails you send over and over and over again so you can just copy and paste? Can you set up a system to send client reminders and make it automatic so you don't have to do anything? Right? Can you update your customer relationship management software so that it sends reminders for you? How can you use technology to assist you and conserve your energy? I think that's a big thing we have to think about. And that's an efficiency thing, right? I'm trying to be efficient with things. Now, the effectiveness of that comes in when I send emails at times that people actually read them. Did you know that people read emails at 8 a.m., 1 p.m., and 4 p.m. 8 a.m., 1 p.m., and 4 p.m. are the most read email hours. And the reason is because when people first log on in the morning, first thing most people do when they get to the office, check email. At 1 o'clock, it's usually they came back from lunch, and one of the first things people do is kind of sit back at their desk and check email. And then at the end of the day, people like to check email before they're done for the day. So can you use technology, Outlook, Google, Gmail, whatever you have, can you use technology to schedule those emails to go out at the most read hours, right? I always do email at 4 o'clock in the afternoon for me. It's always a good time to do my email. And I schedule them then usually to go at 8 o'clock the next day. Because unless there's something I need somebody to do by 5, I'd rather they just go ahead and answer it tomorrow. So I schedule my email to go at 8 a.m. the next day. That way it's top of their inbox and I get more responses. So that's the effectiveness side, right? We want to be efficient with it. How do we make it more effective? By making sure it goes out at a time that they can read. Right? Another thing to think about with technology and automatic stuff is how do we do templates for things that we do over and over again? At your company, do you have a template for meeting agendas? So everybody's agenda kind of looks the same. You just change up what you're actually talking about. Maybe you have templates for common emails you get from clients, common responses. So you just save it as a draft and then you can copy and paste. Saves you time. The other part of this is, where can you set up routines and processes to conserve energy, right? So maybe it's not a technology issue. Maybe it's just a you issue. You got to sit down and do your email. That's something we have to do. You have to sit and you have to make those calls. You have to sit and you have to balance that spreadsheet before you send it to the client, right? So there's things that you have to do, and it has to be you doing them. But thinking about, how can we establish routines and processes to conserve our energy? One of the big things that I always think about is, you know how when you're going to work in the morning, right? Sometimes do you get to work and then like you're walking into the building and you realize, I don't really remember actually making the drive to get here, but somehow I ended up here. Right? Like, I think we've all been there, right? Why? Because we went on autopilot. Our brain and our energy went on autopilot. We knew the route to work. And while it is a little scary because we were manning a vehicle, it just became habit, right? It was something that we conserved energy and did on autopilot. I want you to think about if there's anything else at work that you could do on autopilot. For me, there are certain processes in my business where it's such a process, it's such a system, step 1, step 2, step 3, that's autopilot. I don't have to put any extra energy into it. I'm not creating it. It's the same thing I do right? Our accountant at the end of the month, right? He asks me for the same set of things that he needs for me to do his end of the month report, right? He doesn't put energy into creating that list. I don't put energy into answering. It's a routine. We do it on autopilot. When it shows up at the end of the month, there it is. That's what we're going to do, right? So realize that if you set up processes and routines that are repeatable, you can get into autopilot mode. Now, that's maybe not saving you any time, but it is going to be saving you energy. And when you can innovate processes and procedures so they save you time and energy, and things just kind of happen, and you're like, wow, I don't even really feel like I spent that much time on it, or I put that much energy into it. I then like to call that, so it happened automagically, right? It was automatic, it was on autopilot, you didn't even realize it, and it just happened automagically. And I think that's a great word, so I like to use it. Oh, here's your CPE question. Popping up. True or false? Automatic autopilot helps you to spend time now, save time later. Yes? All right. So again, right? We're doing things, making things automatic, right? With technology, any tasks on your list that you can use technology to do, anything that you can put routines around, anything that doesn't require customization, all good things for automatic. Autopilot, a lot of people talk about habit stacking, making sure we have habits in place for the things so that we can conserve the energy, right? It helps you feel better about your productivity when you don't feel like you're having to put all this energy into creation all the time. So automatic and autopilot. So that is the majority of the Shark method system. And while it is a system that I take clients through a step-by-step method, and we still have 2 steps coming up, but I think this is a good stopping point to say, right, a little pause to say, you don't have to do all of these steps in order. You don't have to do all of this as one big system. You can also just choose to say, Stevie Dawn told me I should probably focus on only work that moves the needle. Cool. Use that. You're going to be more efficient and productive. Maybe your thought is, I know I need to delegate differently. And so I'm going to do a better job at delegating process or outcome and being more specific and effective in my communication. Awesome. Maybe you're already thinking about some things you can do with technology to give yourself more of that time back or more of that energy back. Great, right? It's all about being able to say, what can I do to focus on the work that matters, to move the needle, and to be as efficient and effective as possible, right? So the first 3 steps can be done as a process, or you can choose which thing you want to work on and just work on it. Because inevitably, any anything you do to make yourself that little bit more efficient, that little bit more effective, is gonna really reap some rewards for you and your energy moving forward. So we've talked about streamlining, we've talked about hands-off, handoff, we've talked about autopilot and automatic. So the next one is to review. So one of the things that I think we have to be careful of is to not just do the questioning once, right? Like think about delegation once or think about streamlining your work once and never come back to it, right? Things pop back up on your list. Maybe not because you wanted them to, maybe because somebody else put them on your list, but they pop back up. So you gotta have a sense of reviewing your work, of reviewing your productivity. So I do a review session every 90 days, and we do that as a team. I also do it individually, but we do it as a team every 90 days, which is about every quarter. That makes sense from a business perspective. We go through and we look at, are we still streamlined? Are we still focusing on the work that truly matters, right? Are we being honest with our efficiency and our effectiveness? Are we being honest in our delegation? And are we truly delegating the things that should be delegated? And are we doing it based on outcome and process? Have we sunset things that we need to sunset? Have we used technology to help us? These are all questions we come around the table as a team and look at every 90 days. And reviewing your work means truly being honest with yourself, being able to ask yourself what's working, what's not working, and then embracing those small pivots. So one of the things that I learned from my shark diving experience last year is that sharks do not make big movements. They really don't. They kind of just swim in from this direction with their eye on the prize, right? And they may move an inch here, an inch there to get to where they want to be, but they don't make huge turns. I think sometimes in our work, especially when we're working with others, we decide, okay, it's not working, wash my hands of the whole thing, throw it away, go over here, right? We make these huge turns instead of just making little pivots, little tweaks, still keeping our eye on the prize. And I see that a lot when it comes to delegation. I see that a lot when it comes to team meetings, right? People making these big decisions, sweeping decisions. Oh, we're going to do this. Oh, we're not going to do that anymore. Oh, I'm not going to delegate to him anymore. Instead of just making little tweaks, maybe you need to work with him a little more on the process. Maybe the team meeting would be useful if we focused it like this. So I think it's important not to always just make these huge sweeping turns in our productivity, but embracing those little pivots to really see how we're moving forward. Some of the questions you might ask yourself at one of these review sessions is, how does your energy feel lately? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel swamped? Do you feel like you're spending your time delegating and then taking it back on, and then delegating it again and then taking it back on again, right? That's going to zap your energy and you're going to feel super tired. Where are you spending the majority of your time? Are you moving the needle? Are you doing things that really make a difference? Or do you feel like you're just fighting fires all day? You're just dealing with the current moment of chaos and your actual work is not getting done, right? How can we change that for you? How can we make sure that you're doing the work that matters and still putting on your suit and being a firefighter? Because we know that there's a lot of us that end up doing that anyway, right? And I can't possibly tell you just stop putting out the fires, stop handling the chaos. No, that's not practical. You're still going to have to do that. How do we make the rest of your time more focused and more productive so you have the time to fight the fires? Because that's going to be an important part of getting to that next step. A lot of us have heard of the 80-20 principle. 80% of your outcome is a result of 20% of your work. Think about that. 80% of an outcome is usually about 20% of your work. And the reason that's kind of an important thing to realize is if you look at your list and you're doing all this stuff, but you're not moving the needle getting to that goal, then are you doing the right stuff? Right? Because 20% of our work, right, producing 80% of our result, awesome. What's the other 80% of our work doing? What else are we focused on? We have to make sure that we're focused on the work that truly matters so that we're not getting stuck in that mode. So we've streamlined, we've handed off, we've delegated, we've set things on automatic, we've set things on autopilot, we've used technology, we've reviewed things, and now we're at that point where we just got to keep swimming. We just got to keep doing the work, right? And one of the things that I think happens when we talk about productivity is we try something, it doesn't work, and we give up or we move on, and we're expecting a change overnight. Productivity does not improve overnight. There's going to be times that you're going to want to step away from the process. There's going to be times that you don't feel like you're getting any more productive, but you got to keep trying. You got to keep swimming, right? And one of the things that I've always looked at with my great white sharks is that if they stop swimming, they die. So how do you make sure that you keep swimming, that you keep moving forward, that you keep trying things? And my encouragement for you is to take some of these strategies, even just take one of these strategies and apply it and try it. If it doesn't work, try a different strategy, but keep coming back to the board because we need the energy back. We need our time back. All of us are asked to do so much in so little time. That the more productive, the more efficient and effective we can be, the better off we're going to be. Because when we spend time and energy on the things that matter, we impact not only our lives, but the lives of people around us. How many of us have felt the weight of people around us being overwhelmed or stressed or exhausted? How many of us feel like when they're overwhelmed, then we're going to be overwhelmed? We have to find a way to keep moving forward and to keep swimming with that. So when we look at the shark method as a whole, while yes, it can be a process, it's also a variety of strategies. And I hope that you pick the strategies that work for you and implement them to try and make it as productive for you as you can. And there's lots more to each element of this, but I've tried to really give you just things I feel like you can walk away today and try something. You could walk away today and try to just focus on the work that matters. Realize the things that are wasting your time and try to steer clear of them. You could delegate more effectively. You could use technology more. You can keep coming back and reviewing your process with yourself, with your team, to try and make these differences, these changes to our stuff. But at the end of the day, why does it matter? And there are some specific things here that I wanted to share with you and a couple more strategies to put out there. The average employee is interrupted 56 times per day. 56 times per day. Now that is based on research of before we were working from home. Many people are finding working from home a lot more interrupted. Not because of Joe Schmo from down the hall coming and saying, hey, you want to grab a cup of coffee? Or my favorite ultimate no-no phrase in my world, hey, have you got a minute? No, it's right now people are interrupted because they've got kids, they've got fur babies, and they've got all the trappings of home, and they're being interrupted even more. But think about this, even in a perfect day when you were only interrupted 56 times, this results in at least 2 hours of recovery time. Those interruptions that, hey, have you got a minute, that really turns into 5 minutes, that really turns into 20 minutes of remembering what you were working on before that person interrupted you, that results in 2 hours of recovery time. It takes you 2 hours just to get back into what you were doing. We have to find ways to get our time back. And I'm going to tell you 2 of my biggest things about people and time. Number 1, the interruptions. The people who say, hey, have you got a minute? The constant texts and emails on the phone, the constant Zoom meetings, whatever it is. I want you to really think and ask yourself, are your conversations productive? What if every conversation you had to have produced a result? Think about that for a second. What if every conversation you had to have in a work setting, right? We all know that at home we have conversations that don't have a result. What if every conversation you had to have in a work setting produced a result? it produced an outcome, it had a point, had a purpose, we would have very different conversations. What I want you to think about is, how do we stop? How do we pull back on the, hey, have you got a minute scenarios? When we are interrupting each other and making each other have this recovery time because we're interrupting just to ask these little questions. And even though the conversations may be necessary, it could be that same conversation could happen after I'm done with this task, when I have more time to focus. And so it would be worth it to tell the person who's saying, hey, have you got a minute? You know what? I will be free at 4 o'clock. I'm on a webinar right now. So I think one of the things we have to do to be more productive is we have to get good at the time interruptions. We have to get better at not interrupting other people so that hopefully they will also learn not to interrupt us. And we have to get better at setting expectations. When somebody comes by and says, hey, have you got a minute? That is a question that yes or no are both acceptable answers to, but yet somehow we always just say, yeah, sure. The answer might be, no, I'm in the middle of something. Can we do this in a little bit? Being really thoughtful to how you use those time interruptions, how we get fewer of them so that we get more time back in our day. So that's something I want you to think about. The other thing, right, if we're talking about productive conversations and not interrupting people for their time, I think we also have to talk about productive meetings. We have all been in that meeting that could have been an email, right? And especially even now, I have some clients that are doing so many Zoom calls that their employees are zoomed out. I don't need another Zoom call today, right? So are your meetings productive? Do they have a purpose? Do they have a goal? And if they do, then it's worth doing. But if you really are doing a meeting just because, well, we always have a Friday meeting or we always have a Monday morning meeting, if you can't say that it's productive, then it might be worth sunsetting that meeting and getting that time back. Because we are being asked to do more in less time than ever before. Most of us are being asked to wear multiple hats. We're tied to our phones throughout the day, throughout the night, throughout the weekend. We're being tasked with doing so much that it's really important that we find time to really say, is this productive? Is it moving the needle? Is it efficient? Is it effective? Those are all questions we should be asking ourselves. So my last thought for you is, I always like to say, if I bothered to put the word doctor at the front of my name, I should give you a prescription, right? I should be able to write something to help you get a prescription for success. And so these are some of the things that I think you can do, right? Number one, set expectations. Have you got a minute? Actually, right now it's not the best. Maybe we could do it later. Handle those interruptions with grace. Be nice about it. Be cordial about it. But make sure you're really setting those expectations. Manage your priorities. Go through some of those shark steps and think about, how am I making sure that I do the work that matters before I worry about firefighting, right? Before I worry about the chaos. And number three, let's all agree. And I know, I'm sure all of you are with me in this, because of course it's always the people who aren't on my calls that are doing the pointless meetings. I'm sure you're not those people. Let's stop having pointless meetings. If it has a purpose and an agenda, cool. Also, let's be brave. And I'm doing a webinar tomorrow all about courage. And one of the things that came up when I was preparing for it is courage in communication, right? How do we be courageous? How do we speak up to a meeting we're invited to and say, is my presence required or desired? Because a lot of us are invited to meetings that we actually do not have to attend. They're just including us. They're being inclusive. They're making sure we know what's going on. Do you have the courage to ask the question, is my presence, is my attendance at this meeting required or simply desired? Because of course, if I have the time, I want to be there for you. But if I have other things that would make me more productive, more effective, more efficient, let me spend the time doing those. So I want you to think about these things as things you can do, tangible things you can take with you to try and move the needle for yourself and move the needle for your productivity. So I think we're going to have our last CPE question coming up. How can you set yourself up for success? That's the great CPE question. I love it. Those are all great. I want you to take this time, right? And I know it may not be an actual question. It may just be a response to this question. But I would love for you to open the question and answer box and tell me what's one thing you're taking away from our time together today. What's one strategy, one approach, one thing that you're taking away from our time today and moving forward with you for being productive, right? So I know it says Q&A, but I would love to just hear what your greatest takeaways are. I know we've got several people on the call, and I just like to know what people are thinking and feeling from the session, what's sticking with them. So go into the chat box and let us know, what were your biggest takeaways from today? What are your biggest takeaways from this session? What's the one thing that you're going to be taking with you to move into? Okay, let's see. I've got taking time up front to delegate process, taking the time to train so then I save time later. Yes, awesome. So good. Specific on delegating process when that is the intent and not delegating the outcome. And it's so huge, right? There are so many things we know that we have delegated that we really wanted it to show up a certain way. We really were expecting them to do a certain process, but we didn't say that. We just delegated the outcome and we're hoping that it came the way we assumed. And so just that difference, y'all, that will make a huge difference in your life when you are delegating, if you can separate those two. So I'm so glad that that was powerful for some of you. Does this move the needle? Oh, good. Maribel, good to see you. I love seeing names I recognize. That's amazing. Yes, right? Does this move the needle? One of the best questions we can ask ourselves before we start any task is this moving the needle towards my goals? Investing time in training people to do the tasks, investing time in delegation, remembering that delegating now is to save you time later. Right now, you're going to have to spend time telling this person what to do. So that's going to take some time, and that's okay. Hey, Ashley, already marked my calendar to have some sunset meetings. Ashley, there you go. A+, right? I will tell you, as that is one of the best things you can do. As a small business, right? I'm a small company. We do sunset meetings every quarter because we're always launching new programs, new topics. Like we're launching a new topic tomorrow. And as we launch new things, I always like to say at the end of the quarter, were they valuable? Were they good? Are there some topics that are no longer valuable? Let's sunset those. So, so good. Working more to automate and autopilot things since I'm an office of one. Yes, right? When you're in an office of one and you don't have a lot of people you can give things to, right? You may not be able to give anything away. What can you make easier by using technology, by setting up routines and habits so that you conserve energy? So true. The answer to have you got a minute does not have to be yes. Absolutely, Cindy. Very good. Make a list of everything, sort it into buckets. That's that first step, Michelle. Absolutely. First step. Make a list of everything, put it into buckets. Efficiency versus effectiveness. Absolutely. Are we being efficient with things? Are we being effective with people? And you know, one of the things I always say is a person is always worth the extra 2 minutes. I'm not sure my email is. I want you to think about that. A person is always worth the extra 2 minutes. I'm not sure my email is, right? Absolutely. So good. Well, I'm so glad that you all got some takeaways from today. Thank you so much for being here, being a part of it. If you have any questions you would like me to answer, we've still got about 8 minutes left, and I definitely want to answer those questions for you. If you don't have any questions, That's also totally okay. I absolutely understand. Yes, this is being recorded. I know that was asked earlier. Yes, it's being recorded. Yes, you will get access to the slides as well. And y'all, I have an ebook all about productivity. And it's all about the SHARK method, and it gives you worksheets and all the things. So feel free, there's a link on the slides. You can, when you get the slides, you can click on that link or just email me and I'm happy to send it to you. It's just something I put together for my clients on how to work through that SHARK method of productivity, how to delegate, how to ask yourself, how to hold review sessions. It's got all that stuff on it. So I'm happy to send that to you if you're interested. You can either click the link to do it, or you can just send me an email anytime, and I'm happy to give you that information. All right, I'm looking for questions in the box. I know we had tons of takeaways. It's what you're doing, moving the needle, so good. Have you got a minute does not have to be yes. I think that's one of my favorites. I should put that in a quote somewhere. The answer to have you got a minute does not have to be yes. So good. All right, well, I'm not seeing any questions, so I also want to give y'all time back, the gift of time and all that. So Katie, I will turn it back over to you to close us out and wrap up our time together.
Thank you for joining us. To stay up to date on all LGT's not-for-profit webinars, please make sure to follow our events page for more information. The link is in the description below, along with other important resources, including our social media. If you want to see future Langorm and Trubit webinars, subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications. Thanks, and have a great day.